Short parenthesis, like at some point right after, he plays the game of chess against the computer. Is there some people here playing chess? Okay. Kubrick himself was a very good and very passionate chess player. And this game is pretty interesting, actually.
Anyway, queen takes pawn.
We'll go back a bit to that. I just put two examples of how he used chess in his previous movies. This is the Killing.
Began the final preparations.
You want somebody to play with?
No thanks. I'm just looking for a friend.
Oh, you patzer. You missed the move. Knight to knight 5, pawn takes knight. Rook takes rook, queen to rook 4, check. King to bishop.
Go away, bother someone else. You don't know what you're talking. He couldn't do that. You don't know what you're talking.
Shut up, patzer. Make a move.
He's right. I could have won your rook.
Move, patzer.
No.
And Lolita, so a bit before 2001.
Well, that wasn't very clever of you.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Oh.
It had to happen sometime.
Okay, back to the 2001 game. Yeah, Kubrick, basically, he explained many times, like he has put, even like when he was filming, he was playing a lot with the different members of the crews, were playing chess and all. And when he was young, he spent like a huge amount of time in New York, in Central Park, playing chess in public to make a bit of money. This game, so that he knew exactly what this game he has chosen, that's a historical game, which is a bit funny, but like what is very interesting is that what's happening here.
Lovely move. Rook to king 1.
I'm sorry, Frank. I think you missed it. Queen to bishop 3. Bishop takes queen. Knight takes bishop. Mate.
Yeah, looks like you're right. I resign.
And actually, he's not right. I mean, okay, like if you like that game, I studied that game, and the computer is bluffing. And you don't see it, like even like the way it's done, like even if you play chess really, unless you really study that game, that part, you don't see the goof. Like again, it's not a goof, of course, like Kubrick was a very strong player, so he knew what he was doing. But the computer is cheating. And the man accepts it blindly. Like actually, you just think a few seconds and you know, like, no, wait a second, I'm not obliged to play that, what the computer says. So that's a hint for what's going to happen later.
Thank you for a very enjoyable game.
Yeah, thank you.
You're working up your crew psychology report.
So a few minutes later.
Of course I am. Sorry about this. I know it's a bit silly. Just a moment.
So basically, the astronaut was drawing like part of this long journey. He was making some drawings and all, and the computer asked him to, can he see those drawings? He compliments the astronaut, oh, they're very nice and all, and then computer start asking like how the astronaut feels about the mission. Because he himself, the computer, has some doubts, or he explains that he's not actually something a bit strange happening with this mission. And the astronaut tries to play smart. He's asking like, hey, are you working on your psychological report about me? The computer says, yeah, of course, I'm doing. That's part of my job. And then there's something happening here, which is really a turning point in the movie, which happens very in a subtle way.
Just a moment. I've just picked up a fault in the AE-35 unit. It's going to go 100% failure within 72 hours.
So basically, like the computer is saying, oh, there's going to be a fault. the computer makes no mistake, or actually we just seen before that he's able to bluff. But he's telling, like, so there's a lot of ambiguity here. Is he telling the truth or not? Or is it playing? We don't know, and we'll never know, I think. So basically they had to go to the space. It lasts long time. Like it's Kubrick really wanted, I didn't show that, but if you remember the movie, it really is very slow how the people move to space. Like it gives really a strong impression of time and space that, yes, like they are lost in the middle of the universe. That's a dangerous place to be. So, and after they came and they discovered that actually the fault predicted by the computer doesn't seem likely.
I hope the two of you are not concerned about this.
So there is this dialogue.
No, I'm not, Al.
Are you quite sure?
Yeah, I'd like to ask you a question, though.
Of course.
How would you account for this discrepancy between you and the Twin 9000?
Well, I don't think there is any question about it. It can only be attributable to human error. This sort of thing has cropped up before, and it has always been due to human error.
Listen, Hal. There's never been any instance at all of computer error occurring in the 9000 series, has there?
None whatsoever, Frank. The 9000 series has a perfect operational record.
Well, of course I know all the wonderful achievements of the 9000 series, but are you certain there's never been any case of even the most insignificant computer error?
None whatsoever, Frank. Quite honestly, I wouldn't worry myself about that.
Well, I'm sure you're right, Hal. Fine. Thanks very much.
Okay, so they're very sure that, okay, fine, they're happy with the explanation. Of course they are not. And then they're planning to disconnect the computer. They're planning to disconnect or to kill something which claims to be conscious, self-conscious. That raises moral questions.
If he were proven to be malfunctioning, I wouldn't see how we'd have any choice but disconnection.
I'm afraid I agree with you.
Here, like, okay, I'll pause again. There are so many things to say about this movie, the way it's done, like the cinematography, the composition of the shots. I'm not highlighting a lot here. That would be way too long. You can just, like, for example, like you can see the composition here. Kubrick has a great sense of making plans, the symmetry. Like you can think about The Shining, for example, the corridors, or many things like that, or even 2001. So the building the composition about the symmetry and the sense of perspective. So here you have the two characters, a dialogue, but so there it's a composition, classic composition, 2/3, 1/3. So which is well composed, but actually in this kind of theory of composition of pictures, the central point is the point of power. It's not casual so that you have two people discussing, but actually your eye is captivated by the central point, and it's a perfect composition in terms of symmetry and all. And you can just see the red eye of Hal. And he observes.
There'd be nothing else to do.
Be a bit tricky.
They just disconnected all the sound so that Hal couldn't hear what they were saying.
Without disturbing the purely automatic and regulatory systems. And we'd have to work out the transfer procedures of continuing the mission under ground-based computer control.
Yeah. Well, that's far safer than allowing Hal to continue running things.
You know, another thing just occurred to me. Well, as far as I know, no 9000 computers have been disconnected.
Well, no 9000 computers ever fouled up before.
That's not what I mean. Well, I'm not so sure what he'd think about it.
how basically like how Kubrick, a director like Kubrick, uses then the composition and the editing. Like in these scenes, you have the dialogues, and then with a clear cut, like that, the next picture goes to again like one of the probably 50 different shots that you have, completely with a focus just on this optical lens with the red, yellow eye, symbolizing the computer. And then the shot again back to what the computer sees. The computer sees what he explained a bit later, that the lips moving so that he could lip read. Back and forth, like you could see, like basically you're placing the point of view from the eye of the computer, so that's just brilliant editing. And then there's intermission in the peak of like this dialogue, like when the two main characters are planning to disconnect, so it becomes really a battle for to death. And then there's an intermission which lasts for 2 minutes with some nice music, and then back to space. One of those shots that we've seen before, like for minutes and minutes, and they are long and long, almost painful to watch how it's long and slow. And then a slight variation. The sound editing is amazing in that movie. That's one of the only science fiction movie where you have spaceships and they don't make noise in space. Of course, spaceships, they don't make noise in space. Here, that's the noise of the breathing of the astronauts that we hear. And then this shot, editing. So far that this part was extremely slow. For 1 hour we could see spaceship and few dialogues and all, like it's long, it's take its time, and then suddenly like super fast cut, super fast editing, you can see like tack, 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 and then the spaceship, the little pod, that's what they call, and it becomes from a tiny cute toy, and then suddenly like it turns out a monster that is ready to kill, and it's going to kill, so that it kills the astronaut here, controlled by the main computer, of course. Then the other astronaut goes to space, try to grab the body of his friend, colleague. And then during that time, Hal chooses to disconnect and kill the 3 other people who are in hibernation. And again here, that's the editing, the power of very simple editing. So you could just see like this, the screen. You cannot even see the people who are dead, who are going to be killed. You just like live functions, and then computer. There's a small story. Yes, this previous one here. You remember about my long digression about product placement. IBM, you could see IBM, blah blah, or Honeywell, or another computer manufacturer of that time, Bell and all. They were very happy to be associated with the spaceship at the beginning, which were dancing in harmony around the Earth and bringing people to the moon. Kubrick was smart enough like not to provoke them to the extent to put IBM next to this computer malfunction signal. And there's no also product placement with HAL itself.
Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal.
So this is really the real-time editing how in the movie, so that suddenly you could see HAL disconnecting or killing people by suppressing their life support system in hibernation. While the remaining astronaut, and that's the only survivor so far, is outside in space, and he tries to re-enter. And this shot is quite extremely graphic. A huge spaceship controlled by the computer, so which is so much more powerful and everything than the humans. And the humans is this small thing. I think the David and Goliath image comes to mind when you see that.
Oh, Hal, do you read me?
A little bit fast forward.
Do you read me, Hal?
Affirmative, Dave. I read you.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
Yeah, so here, like, it's really the key, this dialogue is the key about evolution, basically. It turns like, as if evolution, like, this mission is important. It's important for the evolution. That might be the most important mission ever made by man, because it's involved, like, the next step of evolution. And then as you have an artificial entity which claims to be conscious, is conscious, or maybe he mimics consciousness, we'll never know. But he feels that the mission is too important to be left to humans. That's what's going on, and the humans basically, humans basically they fight for their survival here. So that's the collaboration between the robot, our own creation. And so is it a friendly collaboration, or can it turn really as a war that we would have to fight for our survival? So at least here, that's how it turns out. And you can see that man, like the small David in the small spaceship, which seems to be completely lost compared to this Goliath, and the big ship in control of everything. Find the resources. Like again, pay attention just to the soundtrack. It's the void. There's no air, therefore there's no sound.
That emergency airlock was a tall, narrow set. And the camera was on the floor.
So the actor explains how it was shot.
At a harness and one piano wire, which looped up through that artificial door. And I had no helmet. I mean, it was just my head. I didn't want to do a lot of takes of this. I think I only did 2. And I think on the second tape, I was actually, as I was hurtling down, able to grab that handle, which was supposed to close the hatch so that oxygen could then fill the chamber.
Yeah, many stunts, they were actually very dangerous, and that's probably, it couldn't be done these days. Like these days, of course, there would be a lot of CGI and all, but yeah. Then this scene, it's about, so that basically the astronaut succeeds to enter the spaceship again, could regain control, and by disconnecting. So finally, this scene is very poignant, or you say, it's very strange to see that, I feel.
I can feel it.
So the computer, he tries to dissuade Dave, the astronaut, to disconnect it. He's saying that he's afraid of dying.
Great.
And little by little, as he's disconnected from those small things, like his voice vanishes.
And he taught me to sing a song. If you'd like to hear it.
So that's a part of the, probably like when you're getting old and completely disabled, that there's a part which says like you go back to your initial childhood. Probably that's what's happening to the computer here.
I can sing it for you.
Yes. I'd like to hear it, Hal.
So that's the last word actually pronounced in the movie.
It's called Daisy. 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 Give me your answer, do. I'm half crazy. All for the love of you.
Yeah, so this song like is a bit strange because it's how do you say, a lullaby, something like that, like it's Daisy, Daisy, I'm half crazy for the love of you, which feels like amazingly fit for this piece actually. He's half crazy, that the computer is half crazy. That's one thing that many scientists even now, like 55 years later, like one of the big questions behind AI, like we can all think about ChatGPT and those things which are coming these days, but as long as those programs or whatever how you call it, like entities, artificial intelligence things, they evolve and they gain some kind of consciousness, they will also develop the same mental, how do you say, difficulties or the same mental diseases than humans. It comes somehow, it might come with the evolution of consciousness that we can become psychopaths. Some of us become psychopaths. Okay, the small explanation about the song, which is
late 1950s, we began experimenting with giving a machine a voice, synthetic speech capability. And one of the easiest ways to give a machine a voice is to let it sing, because it basically emphasizes the vowels, and that's what we do a very good job with synthetic speech. So we had produced a synthetic machine singing Daisy, Daisy. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer too.
The idea of Daisy, Daisy originates from a friend of mine, Dr. John Pierce, who was at the Bell Telephone Labs and experimenting with speech synthesis. And this must be perhaps 30 years ago, but one of the first computer songs sung very mechanically by a computer was Daisy, Daisy. And I don't know where the recording is, but it should be interesting to dig that out.
I'm half crazy, all for the love of you. They basically assembled what-if scenarios on technology, and it certainly captivated the team that Mr. Kubrick sent, and it got used in the movie. Sweet upon the seat of a bicycle built for two.
Your computer basically is dead, disconnected. There's a slight goof also.
Pre-recorded briefing.
Here, by the way, he turns right.
Made prior to your departure. And which for security reasons, of the highest
opposite,
importance,
so it doesn't matter,
has been known on board during the mission only by your HAL 9000 computer.
So basically here, that's a bit a moral question, or a big, probably a question that will never be answered, and that's the computer, basically, is it a choice by the computer being dead, him being failing in his mission, like to try to make this mission successful, but like maybe he gave this crucial piece of information to the humans, so that the humans at least could succeed in that mission. That's one option, that's my favorite interpretation here. Or maybe just like the computer being dead, like it was programmed to give this piece of information. So it was released, and the computer knew basically the objective, the real objective of the mission, whereas the astronaut didn't. And then it's really the fourth and final part, which is so open to imagination, interpretation, like it's just a pure poetry, I think, of cinematography. So that there's not much to say, I believe. Just like in the book, that's very explicit, like this scene. You see that alignment, perfect alignment of the planets. So they've reached Jupiter. That's probably a moon of Jupiter or something like that. And here, floating in space, another monolith. Like remember that monolith in the second, which was planted on the moon, basically was pointing at this monolith here. So that they reach, the astronaut reaches that space, and the monolith here almost disappears. The Ligeti music is coming back. The monolith disappears in space. There's a camera shift up. And then starts a piece of 10 minutes of complete hallucination on screen, which is, when you think about it, like it's one huge commercial movie. I mean, it's millions of dollars invested by various companies and all, and Kubrick managed to put 10 minutes of pure visual poetry and experimentation.
If there was a conventional way to do it, forget that and think of something else. Go 180 degrees in the opposite direction and think of something new, different, in absolutely every category of work. And it made me open up to the whole idea of what is film.
Yeah, so what is film? Like it's a guy who participated to this creation of this hallucination kind of thing. So that's called the Stargate. That's when basically people, like the astronaut, the final survivor, he reaches that, it's a final monolith floating around Jupiter. He kind of enters the monolith. That's a gate. That's called the Stargate in the script. So when he comes to almost another dimension, like it's just what it calls, and he lands where? In a room, like 19th century kind of room, cozy, completely human, completely inhuman also. That's completely artificial. Everything is artificial there, but like it's made to be that human being might be at ease, might be comfortable. And he himself, like if you, in the movie, he himself see in different further stages in his life, till he's dying, and there he's finally dead on his deathbed, and then a fourth monolith appears just in front of him, and he points. He has the same movement than the monkeys at the beginning, basically. He has seen this monolith. One thing that Kubrick mentioned about this movie, which is, mentioned something like this movie is about a scientific explanation of the concept of God. And this is the final image. So it ends with a very enigmatic, I think, the last part, the fourth part, which is about 15 minutes or so, like from the Stargate to this shot, is so surreal. Or I think the reasonable explanation is that after this whole trip, that specific person, but which symbolizes a little bit like the whole humanity, has reached a step. So there's different steps, so that he has reached the fourth monolith. That's from the monkeys, from the moon, the one on the moon, the one on Jupiter, and the one finally who is there when he's dead, on his life dead, and then he shows, and again, it's like he goes through it, and that's a reincarnation in a human, but he's not really human baby, of course. His eyes are fully aware, his eyes are open, so as if he has reached the next level, and he goes back to the earth somehow after this crazy trip, and he's kind of ready to go back to earth and to evolve in a new thing, eventually helped by aliens, why not? Helped by the own creation of man, like the computer, or the golem, like it's a part of the Old Testament, like invention of man, like the man creating a machine at its image, and eventually which would help him, but which will end up with a fight with him eventually. And finally, like it's part of the evolution. So clearly, like one of the main themes of the movie is human evolution. A big part of it, I think, you could see, like it's really a movie which is very important historically and politically in its period in the 60s. I spent a lot of time explaining and the concept of evolution and all. But like above all, like what Kubrick wanted to do. That's his only science fiction movie, and that's a movie which stands out for everything else which was done. I think first my interpretation is that he wanted to create a myth. He wanted to create one mythical movie that people even 50 years later would be completely amazed and captivated by it, and asking questions like, what is that? And I think, I read one explanation about the shape, what this monolith, like it's the symbol of, Kubrick himself explained that it's a symbol of some god, like eventually alien culture, alien civilization, way more advanced than us, which a civilization which doesn't need human-like bodies or even robot-like bodies, a pure spiritual space, kind of, which was symbolized by this perfection of this monolith. But I think, so Kubrick, I think, wanted to give us all this and say, like, this is a myth, like, this is a mythical movie. Free to you to interpret it as you want. It's so poetic in one way. A lot of people hate it because it's so slow, so probably so arrogant in its presentation and all. Like, what are you talking, man? You're talking about God. Like, this is just like a stupid scientific sci-fi flick and all. Maybe it is. But he succeeded to create a movie which is unique in the whole history of cinema, I believe. And